She looked so happy, standing in that shimmering champagne-colored dress, smiling with an almost ethereal glow at the man who was any minute now about to propose in front of 100 of their closest friends and family. I wanted to believe it. God, how I wanted to believe he truly loved her, that this fairy tale was real. But I had seen the texts, the damning photos, the discreet bank transactions. I had the proof, cold and hard, tucked away in an innocuous-looking envelope. So while the string quartet played a delicate romantic melody and the hired photographer's cameras flashed, I waited. I watched. I held my breath. Waited until he got down on one perfectly tailored knee. Waited until he produced the velvet box and uttered those 4 iconic words, "Will you marry me?" And then just as my daughter's eyes filled with joyful tears, I stood up. "Before she says yes," I said, my voice cutting through the sweet music and the hushed anticipation, like a shard of ice. "There's something everyone here, especially Lily, should see." He turned pale, his charming smile freezing, then crumbling. My daughter Lily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with confusion and a dawning terrible fear. And what happened next shattered more than just a carefully orchestrated picture-perfect proposal. It revealed the truth, the intricate lies, the devastating betrayal, and it revealed the unwavering strength of a mother who refused to let her daughter marry a man who only wore loyalty when it was convenient, a man who treated love like a business transaction. I always thought I'd know instinctively the moment someone tried to lie to my daughter Lily. Mothers just know, don't we? It's like we're biologically wired, equipped with an internal radar calibrated to detect the almost imperceptible cracks in a practiced smile, the nervous twitch behind carefully chosen words, the subtle, discordant shift in tone. And for the longest, most hopeful time, I had convinced myself, or rather allowed myself to be convinced, that Ethan Reynolds was flawless. The real deal. He possessed an abundance of charm, an easy charisma that drew people in, and undeniably money. He was a smooth talker with a reassuringly expensive Rolex on his wrist and a framed Harvard degree hanging in his sleek, minimalist apartment. The kind of man who still held doors open for women who remembered your birthday with a thoughtful, personalized gift and always sent flowers. The kind of man who said ma'am with a disarming smile and, most importantly, made my daughter, my precious Lily, feel like she was the absolute center of his universe. But even the sunniest, most cloudless days can hide the subtle, ominous signs of an approaching storm. When Lily first brought Ethan home for dinner, I so desperately wanted to believe he was the one for her. She was incandescent. Her eyes sparkled with a light, a joy I hadn't seen in them since her father, my late husband, passed away years ago. I remember watching her stir the pasta sauce that evening in our small, cozy kitchen, humming a cheerful little tune, swaying from side to side with an uncontainable happiness. "Mom," she'd said, her voice breathless, her cheeks flushed. He's different. He really listens, you know. He's so kind, so considerate. He doesn't just say he loves me. I feel like he truly sees me." And for a moment, caught up in her infectious joy, I let myself believe it too. Ethan arrived bearing flowers, tulips, my favorite, a small, thoughtful detail he'd somehow ascertained. He greeted me with a firm handshake, warm hands and engaging stories about the boutique investment firm he'd recently joined, mostly green energy initiatives, very forward-thinking, he'd said, with an earnest, convincing passion. He was attentive, polished, perhaps in retrospect, a little too polished, like a well-rehearsed performance. But I said nothing. I pushed down the tiny, niggling seed of doubt, because Lily was happy, radiantly, unequivocally happy. And as a mother, sometimes that's all you allow yourself to see. The first almost imperceptible red flag waved a few months later. Lily called me on a Sunday morning, her voice a little too bright, a little too cheerful in that specific way she gets when she's trying very hard to convince herself as much as me that everything is perfectly fine. "Ethan's out of town again this weekend," she said, the casualness in her tone feeling forced. "Another important conference in Miami. Last minute, apparently." I could hear the clink of her spoon stirring coffee on the other end of the line. I heard the almost imperceptible pause before she spoke again. Do you think it's weird that he travels so much for work? So often on weekends, she asked the attempt at nonchalance, failing to completely mask the underlying tremor of unease. I hesitated, choosing my words with care. Well, sweetheart, it depends on the job, I suppose. Does he tell you where he's staying, who he's meeting with? Does he keep in touch? Another pause. Longer this time. Yeah, of course. He always sends photos from his hotel from the conference events. Something about the way she said it, that almost mechanical, overly bright cheerfulness, made the fine hairs on the back of my neck prickle. A mother's intuition, perhaps. But again, I said nothing to fuel her nascent doubts, because she sounded like she desperately needed me to believe it was all perfectly fine. So I offered vague reassurances. The second red flag. That was a less subtle, more jarring chance encounter. About 3 weeks after that phone call, I was running errands downtown during my lunch break when I saw Ethan. Only he wasn't alone. He was sitting outside a trendy little cafe, leaning intimately across a small bistro table toward a woman with vibrant chestnut-colored hair and a throaty, infectious laugh that for some reason made my stomach twist with a sudden, inexplicable dread. His body language wasn't professional. It wasn't friendly. It was intimate. Familiar. The way he looked at her, the way his hand lingered near hers on the table. And when his eyes happened to meet mine across the busy sidewalk, he froze. Just for a split second. A flicker of something, surprise panic, in his usually composed eyes. Then the charming mask snapped back into place. He smiled broadly and waved a casual, almost dismissive gesture as if nothing were amiss. I didn't wave back. I just held his gaze for a moment longer before turning away, my heart beginning to pound a slow, heavy rhythm of foreboding. I didn't confront him then and there. Not yet, because I'm not reckless. I'm not impulsive when it comes to my daughter's heart. I'm a mother, and mothers know sometimes the most dangerous, most damaging move is to act too soon, too emotionally, without all the facts. That night, I called Lily, keeping my tone deliberately light casual. Hey, sweetie, just checking in. Everything good with you and Ethan? Yeah, Mom, everything's great, she said, a little too quickly, a little too brightly. Why do you ask? Oh, no reason in particular, just felt like hearing your voice. I hung up the phone with my heart sinking into my stomach. She didn't know. She didn't suspect a thing. She was in love. Blindly, beautifully, dangerously in love. And that's when I started paying closer attention. Serious attention. My quiet investigation began. I saved screenshots of Lily's happy posts with him cross-referencing dates. I watched his public LinkedIn updates with a new critical eye, noting the subtle discrepancies between his work trips and his actual professional activities. Driven by a gnawing unease, I even managed to find the other woman on social media. Her name was Betrayal, an aspiring influencer with a penchant for designer labels and exotic locations. And within a week of careful, discreet online sleuthing, I found everything I needed, more than I ever wanted to find. Photos, tagged posts, comments under Betrayal's glamorous pictures from men, but one recurring, overly familiar commenter stood out. Hotel check-ins at boutique hotels in cities Ethan had claimed to be attending boring industry conferences, dates that directly contradicted his stories to Lily, but the final sickening nail in the coffin of my hope for Lily's happiness, a series of wire transfers. From Ethan's business account, the one he used for his green energy investments, directly to Betrayal's personal bank account, thousands and thousands of dollars. One particularly large transfer was labeled quite brazenly holding fee, luxury apartment rental. My stomach dropped when I saw the transaction details, the address of the apartment. My hands grew cold. He wasn't just cheating on Lily. He was actively financially setting up a second life with this other woman, a safety net, a parallel existence, all while my innocent, trusting daughter was excitedly planning their engagement, blissfully unaware of the charade. And I knew then with a chilling, absolute certainty this wasn't something to handle quietly, discreetly behind closed doors. This wasn't a matter for gentle conversations or delicate interventions. This was a betrayal so profound, so calculated, it was something the whole damn room needed to see. The truth needed to be brought into the harsh, unforgiving light. The day the invitation arrived, I knew the stage was irrevocably set for a drama I had no choice but to direct. It was a heavy, opulent, ivory-colored envelope, its edges trimmed with real gold leaf, the embossed lettering screaming of money performance, and a carefully curated image. You're cordially invited, a night to remember, an evening of celebration with Ethan Reynolds and Lily Carter. Date, time, location, the Whitmore estate. His family's sprawling, ostentatious vacation property, now frequently rented out as an exclusive event space. My hands trembled as I read the deceptively innocent words. A night to remember indeed. Oh, it would be remembered all right, just not in the way Ethan Reynolds had planned. I called Lily that evening, carefully schooling my voice, pretending nothing had changed in my perception of her wonderful, doting boyfriend. She was as expected, ecstatic, her voice bright and bubbling with dreams of a perfect future. "He's planning everything himself, Mom," he said. "It's a surprise, but it's going to be the most magical romantic night of my entire life. I just know he's going to propose." I smiled through clenched teeth, a bitter taste in my mouth. "I'm sure it will be unforgettable, sweetheart." But inside, a cold, controlled fire of maternal rage was burning, because now I had a deadline, a definitive timeline for action. I spent the next 2 weeks in a maelstrom of preparation, not just emotionally steeling myself for what I had to do, but strategically, meticulously gathering my arsenal. I didn't want to just accuse him based on my gut feelings or a few suspicious social media posts. That would be too easy for him to deny, to twist, to gaslight Lily into disbelieving me. I wanted irrefutable proof, unshakable, unarguable, undeniable. I contacted a trusted friend from my college days, Sarah, who now ran a successful private investigation agency. She owed me a significant favor from years ago, a debt she was more than willing to repay. Within days, she had delivered what I needed: time-stamped, high-resolution photographs of Ethan and Bretrayal entering and exiting boutique hotels together, their body language leaving no room for doubt. Credit card records detailing lavish dinners, expensive gifts, and airline tickets purchased for two. Details of a second secret phone line registered in his name, used exclusively for his communications with Bretrayal. And even a scanned copy of a signed apartment lease for a luxury downtown condo, listing Bretrayal Moreau as the primary tenant with Ethan Reynolds as the financial guarantor. I printed everything, every damning photo, every incriminating document. I labeled each piece of evidence clearly. I organized it all into a neat professional-looking binder. Legal, concise, devastating. I also made printouts of the bank transfer records, carefully highlighting the transactions to Bretrayal, and cross-referenced them with Bretrayal's public social media check-ins at upscale restaurants and resorts, in locations Ethan had claimed to Lily he was visiting for solitary, intense business meetings. He wasn't just cheating. He was systematically, calculatingly financing her entire life, building a comfortable nest for his mistress. All while my daughter, my sweet, unsuspecting Lily, was happily sketching wedding dress designs and dreaming of their future together. The night before the party, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced. I sat at my small kitchen table in the pre-dawn darkness, the thick envelope containing my meticulously gathered evidence lying beside my cold cup of herbal tea. I imagined every possible outcome, every potential reaction. What if Lily hated me for ruining her perfect moment, for shattering her dream, however illusory? What if, despite the overwhelming proof, she still refused to believe me, choosing her love for him over the hard truth? What if I waited too long and she said yes, and the lie became even more deeply entrenched, more damaging to unravel? Then I remembered her as a little girl, all scraped knees and wide, trusting eyes, always asking me after a birthday party or a play date, "Mom, do you think he really likes me? Do you think I'm fun enough?" She'd been seeking validation, trying to be enough her whole life. And here she was again on the precipice of pouring her entire heart, her future, into someone who didn't deserve even a sliver of her pure, unconditional love. I wouldn't let it happen. Not again. Not on my watch. I couldn't. My love for her, my duty as her mother, demanded I act. The day of the party dawned golden and deceptively warm, a perfect summer evening. The Whitmore estate was indeed breathtaking. Lanterns glowed softly from the ancient oak trees. Thousands of tiny string lights sparkled along the winding stone pathways, and a string quartet played elegant romantic melodies in the background, their music drifting on the gentle breeze. Everyone was dressed in shades of white and cream, as requested on the invitation. A fairy tale setting for a fairy tale romance. A carefully constructed illusion. And Lily, she looked like a dream herself. Her gown was a flowing champagne-colored silk that shimmered in the twilight. Her dark hair was curled into soft, tumbling waves adorned with tiny, delicate flowers. Her cheeks were flushed a pretty pink from excitement and happiness. When she saw me arrive, she ran up and hugged me so tight, her joy so palpable I nearly lost my nerve. "Oh, Mom, thank you for coming," she whispered into my shoulder. "This means everything to me. Having you here." I kissed her forehead, my heart aching with what I knew was about to unfold. "I love you more than words can say, sweetheart," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Always. Remember that." Then I looked across the meticulously manicured garden past the smiling, chattering guests, and there he was, Ethan Reynolds, dressed in a sharp, impeccably tailored gray suit, a flute of champagne in his hand, laughing easily with his groomsmen, who were equally slick and polished, confident, relaxed, arrogant, the master of his universe. But when his eyes for a fleeting moment met mine across the expanse of the lawn, I saw it. Beneath the veneer of charm and confidence, a flicker of fear, a subtle tensing of his jaw. He knew. Somehow he sensed that I knew. I waited. I bided my time through the effusive speeches from his best man, from Lily's maid of honor, through the endless cloying toasts to their perfect love and bright future, through the beautifully choreographed first dance as a pre-engaged couple that made the entire crowd swoon and sigh with romantic delight. And then the moment came, the moment he had so carefully orchestrated. The music swelled dramatically. Ethan took Lily's hand, his smile dazzling, and led her to the center of the rose-strewn garden, directly under an elaborate chandelier dripping with white roses and crystals. He knelt down on one knee, the picture of a fairy tale prince. A collective, excited gasp rippled through the crowd. Phones were raised, cameras flashing. He opened the small velvet ring box, revealing a diamond that glittered ostentatiously in the soft light. "Lily," he said, his voice deep and resonant, amplified by a discreet microphone. "You have made me a better man. You are my everything. Will you?" I stepped forward, out of the shadows into the soft glow of the lanterns. My heels echoed on the stone pathway like a series of gunshots in the suddenly hushed garden. Before she answers, I said, my voice clear, steady, and carrying across the stunned silence as I held up the thick manila envelope. "There's something you all, especially Lily, should see." More gasps, shocked whispers, confused murmurs. Ethan froze still on one knee, his charming smile wiped clean from his face, replaced by a look of dawning horror. Lily turned to me, her beautiful face a mask of bewilderment, her eyes wide with confusion. "Mom, what? What are you doing?" And I looked her directly in the eyes, my own heart breaking for the pain I was about to inflict, but resolute in my purpose. "I'm sorry, baby," I said, my voice softer now, but no less firm. "I am so sorry to do this here now. But this isn't a proposal, sweetheart. It's a performance. A very convincing, very cruel performance. And it's long past time the curtain came down." The garden, moments before alive with joyful anticipation, fell into a thick, suffocating silence. It was as if all the air had been sucked out of the idyllic setting. All eyes were on me, 100 pairs of eyes burning with disbelief, with shock, with a horrified curiosity. I could feel their collective judgment pricking at my skin like 1,000 tiny cold needles. Ethan remained on one knee frozen in his romantic pose, a grotesque statue in a suddenly unveiled museum of his own shame. His face, once so confident, was now ashen. Lily took a shaky, uncertain step towards me, her hand, which had been reaching for the ring, now trembling in midair. "Mom, what are you doing?" she whispered, her voice barely audible, laced with a dawning, terrible dread. I looked at her, my heart aching for the illusion I was about to shatter, but my resolve was like steel. "I'm protecting you, sweetheart." From a lie. I held up the thick manila envelope, stepped closer to her, and passed it gently into her trembling hands. "Read it, Lily. Please. You deserve to know the truth. All of it." She blinked, stunned into momentary paralysis, then slowly, hesitantly opened the flap. As she pulled out the contents, the stack of neatly organized documents, the glossy photographs, the printed text messages, her eyes scanned line after line, page after page. I watched her face transform, watched the emotions flicker across her delicate features like a devastating storm. First confusion, then a dawning horrified disbelief, then a wave of sickening pain, and finally, a chilling, heartbreaking realization. "No," she whispered, her voice a fragile, broken thing. "No, this can't be. Ethan." The assembled guests held their collective breath, leaning in, straining to hear, until she turned her eyes, once sparkling with joy, now dark with anguish, to face Ethan. "Is it true?" Her voice cracked, shattering the silence. "This other woman, Bretrayal, did you give her an apartment? Were you with her last weekend when you said you were at that conference in Chicago?" Ethan scrambled to his feet, now his carefully constructed composure completely gone, raw panic finally breaking through his features. "Lily, baby, listen to me. It's not what it looks like. She's just a friend, an old friend from college. She was going through a hard time. She needed some help. That's all. Your mother is twisting things, trying to cause trouble." "A friend?" Lily repeated, her voice gaining a dangerous, icy edge as she lifted one of the photographs, a clear shot of Ethan and Bretrayal locked in a passionate kiss in front of a boutique hotel entrance. This kind of friend, Ethan Fresh, gasps rippled through the crowd. The whispers grew louder, more urgent. One of Ethan's groomsmen muttered loud enough for those nearby to hear, "Oh, man, I told him this would blow up." Another couple friends of Ethan's parents began to quietly back away, their faces etched with embarrassment. Ethan's mask was not just slipping, it was disintegrating fast. He took a desperate step toward Lily, his hands outstretched pleadingly. "Listen, Lily, I was going to end it with her. I swear, she meant nothing to me. It was just a mistake, a stupid mistake." I finally spoke again, my voice calm, cutting through his pathetic excuses. "You wired her over $10,000 in the last 3 months, Ethan, for living expenses. You co-signed her lease on a luxury apartment. The evidence is all there in black and white." He whirled on me, then his eyes flashing with a cornered animal's fury. "You've been spying on me. How dare you interfere in my private life?" I met his venomous gaze without flinching. "I've been protecting my daughter from a con artist, Ethan. That's what mothers do. It's my job." Lily's hands, still clutching the damning evidence, dropped to her sides. The beautiful, shimmering dress suddenly seemed like a costume for a tragedy. Her voice when she spoke was hollow, devoid of all its earlier light. "You were going to propose to me. You were asking me to marry you, all while you were living a completely separate secret life with another woman." Ethan's face, now stripped of all charm, twisted into something ugly, something mean. "Oh, come on, Lily. Don't be so naive. You think you're so special, so irreplaceable. Do you really think all of this?" He gestured dismissively to the lavish party, the stunned guests. "The opulent decorations was truly all for you. My father paid for most of this. My mother invited half these influential people. You were just convenient, a suitable, presentable choice." A sharp, collective intake of breath, like a sudden gust of wind, swept across the stunned garden. The cruelty of his words, the casual, brutal dismissal of her feelings was shocking even to the most jaded among them. My daughter stood there stunned, as if he had physically slapped her. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with a pain that tore at my own heart. And then she laughed. A small, broken, almost hysterical sound at first. Then it grew louder, sharper, tinged with a bitter, liberating clarity. Convenient, she echoed her voice, surprisingly strong, despite the tears now streaming down her face. No, Ethan. What I was naive, trusting, but not anymore. She turned then with a newfound steely resolve to face the silent watching crowd. But I'm not naive anymore. And with a deep, shuddering breath, she let the diamond ring still in its velvet box drop from her trembling fingers to the stone path at her feet. It landed with a soft, definitive thud. More gasps. More shocked murmurs. Ethan took a step toward her, his face a mask of desperation now. "Lily, wait! Don't do this!" She cut him off with a sharply raised hand, her voice ringing with a strength I hadn't known she possessed. "Don't! You don't get to say another word to me, Ethan. Not now, not ever again." Then she turned back to me, her eyes, though tear-filled, now shining with a fierce, determined light. Her voice was softer now, raw with emotion, but firm. "Let's go home, Mom." As we walked away arm in arm through the stunned parting crowd, people moved aside as if we were royalty or perhaps survivors of a terrible shipwreck. Some nodded at me with a newfound silent respect. Others looked away, their faces flushed with embarrassment, perhaps remembering the times they had chosen to look the other way in their own lives and their own families. And Ethan Reynolds, he just stood there alone and abandoned under the ridiculously romantic chandelier of white roses surrounded by all the trappings of wealth and success he thought would make him look powerful, desirable. But in the end, all he had was the deafening silence of 100 judging eyes, and the crushing, inescapable weight of his own calculated, devastating betrayal. The car ride home was quiet. Not a heavy, oppressive silence, but a sacred one. Like the air after a violent thunderstorm, clear, fresh, strangely calm, but still laced with the lingering scent of ozone, with the undeniable evidence of everything that had just been torn apart washed away. Lily stared out the window, her hands folded neatly in her lap, the tears having finally subsided, leaving faint tracks on her cheeks. I didn't press her to talk. I just drove, steady, present, a silent, unwavering pillar of support. When we got back to our small, familiar apartment, she didn't immediately retreat to her room to mourn as I had half expected. Instead, she sat down at the kitchen table, still in her beautiful, shimmering champagne gown, now rumpled and wrinkled, a poignant symbol of the fairy tale it had so spectacularly failed to be. I poured her a tall glass of water, added a slice of lemon, and placed it gently in front of her. She looked up at me, her eyes shadowed but clear. "I feel so stupid, Mom. So incredibly stupid." I shook my head, my heart aching for her. "You weren't stupid, sweetheart. You were in love. And love sometimes makes us see what we want to see, not what's truly there." She let out a short, bitter laugh. "I was in love with a lie, a complete and utter fabrication. You were in love with a version of him that he very skillfully, very deliberately crafted to win you over," I said gently, choosing my words with care. "That's not your fault, Lily. That's his deception. But recognizing it and walking away from it, even when it's the hardest thing in the world, that's your strength. That's your power." Fresh tears welled in her eyes, but this time she nodded a small, resolute movement. "I kept having these little feelings, you know, that something was off, that his stories didn't always add up. But I pushed them down. I didn't want to be that girl. The crazy one. The jealous one. The overthinker." I reached across the worn formica table and took her hand, my fingers lacing through hers. "You weren't crazy, my love. You were kind and trusting. And you are and always have been strong enough to listen when the truth finally decided to speak, however loudly and painfully it had to." She squeezed my hand back, a surprising strength in her grip. And for the first time that long, tumultuous night, a small, watery smile touched her lips. Not the dazzling sparkle and diamonds kind of smile she'd worn earlier, The real kind. The resilient kind. Over the next few weeks, the fallout from the engagement that unraveled, as the society blogs gleefully dubbed it, was brutal, but for Lily, it was also profoundly freeing. Ethan's carefully constructed reputation took a significant and very public hit. The situation escalated when Betrayal, his jilted mistress, posted a tearful, artfully produced apology video on social media claiming she had no idea he was engaged and portraying herself as yet another victim of his duplicity. The internet predictably did what the internet does. Screenshots of my evidence, which someone had inevitably leaked, went viral. Memes were created. Call-out posts abounded. His name became synonymous with engagement party disaster. His prestigious investment firm, concerned about the reputational damage, quietly suspended him pending an internal review. His carefully curated world was crumbling. Lily, with a quiet dignity that made me prouder than I could ever express, blocked him on every platform, returned the few expensive but meaningless gifts he had given her via courier, and refused all his desperate calls and pleading texts. No messy public confrontations, no angry social media posts, just a resolute, powerful silence. And then she began to heal. She started going to therapy, something she'd always been hesitant about before. She took a much-needed sabbatical from her demanding job. She adopted an adorable, scruffy rescue dog from the local shelter, a terrier mix with mismatched ears and an indomitable spirit, and named him Rebel. And in a burst of symbolic reclaiming of her space and self, she painted her childhood bedroom a bold, vibrant teal color, a shade she'd always loved, but had been told by Ethan was too unconventional. And me, I watched, I listened, I supported, proud, so incredibly proud. Not just because she had the courage to walk away from a toxic, deceitful relationship, but because she didn't for one moment consider walking back. One cool evening about a month later, as we were sharing takeout pizza on the couch, Rebel snoring contentedly at her feet, Lily looked at me thoughtfully, a new wisdom in her eyes. "You knew, didn't you, Mom, way before I did. You suspected him for a while. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why let it get to—" That I hesitated, searching for the right words. "Because, sweetheart, I wanted you to see it for yourself, to feel the truth of it in your own heart. Not just hear it as an accusation from me. Love, especially young, hopeful love, can make us incredibly blind to red flags we might otherwise recognize. I didn't want to fight your heart to put you in a position where you felt you had to choose between believing him and believing me. I wanted to guard your heart, to give you the irrefutable truth so you could make your own empowered decision." She nodded slowly, understanding. "You did. You really did." Then she leaned her head on my shoulder, just like she used to do when she was a little girl with a scraped knee or a broken heart from a playground crush. "You saved me, Mom." I smiled, kissing the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. "You saved yourself, Lily. You were the one who had the courage to walk away, to choose truth over a comfortable lie. I just held the flashlight so you could see the path more clearly. Life moved on, as it always inevitably does. But Lily walked into that future with her eyes wide open, her chin held high, her heart bruised but significantly wiser, stronger. And me, I stayed close. Always. Not to protect her from every future storm, because I know I can't and she wouldn't want me to. But to be a constant, unwavering reminder that when the winds of life howl and the world around her shakes, she doesn't need a charming prince on a white horse to save her. She has something far stronger, far more reliable already within her. The truth, her own indomitable spirit, and a mother who will always, always be her shield, her champion, and her softest place to fall.